Well, after 6, Todd Feinberg. Incredible stuff going on in Hartford as the socialist big government crowd seeks to make government bigger and more socialist. What a surprise! But they're in total control, so we should expect them to do the worst things possible for the state and ignore in their policymaking, ignore the fiscal problems in relationship to the new policies they want because this is their chance to get what they want. They don't care how much it hurts the state. Joining us now to talk about it, Senator Rob Sampson from Wolcott. How are you?
Always delighted to be with you, Todd.
I was reading about your town's namesake today because his father was, of course, one of the founding fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun to do a little history reading on your cute little place there.
Connecticut has got tremendous history, and I hope that we hang on to it.
You mean that when the bankruptcy sale happens, the big yard sale for the state to try to pay the tab for the pensions and such, you hope there's something that isn't sold off?
That and the constant directives coming from the state government to our local boards of education about the topics that must be taught. The history of public sector employee unions notwithstanding.
All right. So we were just talking before we went on the air, and you ran through a list of wonderful activities they're engaged in at the Capitol, which is totally different from the list we're going to talk about because there's nothing wonderful in this list, and that was an empty set. So let's run through quickly and have quick chats about whatever we feel like. Let's go through the list of things they're working on. In the paper today was a bonding diet. The governor saying that he wanted to go on a bonding diet. That it was he's accusing his fellow Democrats of having overspent with regard to bonding in recent years.
Well, I'd say that's accurate. When I was first elected in 2011, I think that the bonding cap was around $1.5 billion per year. And I would say at the end of the Malloy administration, they were bonding nearly $3 billion per year. It's remarkable, too, because they actually came before the Appropriations Committee one time when I was serving on that committee and said that they had a soft cap of around $2.4 billion or some such number. And I remember Senator Markley being next to me asking the budget guru that for the governor, what the heck is a soft cap? I mean, it's either a cap or it's not.
Well, you know, a little breeze blows it away. That's a soft cap, I guess.
Indeed, it's a target. Is more than a cap.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Feel good nonsense. Okay, so bonding a way. They always talk about how in state government you can't spend more than you take in. You have to have a balanced budget. But doesn't the nature of bonding defy that explanation of state government?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the only consideration when it comes to bonding is the payment to pay off those bonds, and that has to be factored within the so-called balanced budget. But again, the Democrats over the last 8 years have been very, very clever about the mechanisms they use to budget, particularly by taking things outside of the actual definition of a budget and putting it off to the side so that it's not counted when you factor in what is actually in the budget or not.
Yeah, so you just change the name to a crudget item, and then it doesn't show up on that spreadsheet.
Exactly. And this is how they've managed to avoid a real direct conflict with our spending cap, because you just move the goalposts whenever you want to, and you don't have to abide by that.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so that's the bonding diet. Investment in cities. What does that mean? I thought that's all we do. Cities are not self-sufficient.
Right. I think that that means more wealth redistribution. I think it's going to be a prelude to the regionalization bill that's out there, and other mechanisms to essentially allow taxpayers, or force taxpayers rather, in small, well-run suburban and rural towns to end up making up for the shortfalls that are in our major cities. I mean, the legislature is already doing that on a day-to-day basis. That's the way our state government is run. But I think that they are looking to do even more of that because those cities are spiraling into debt. We had to bail out the city of Hartford to the tune of $500 million a couple of years ago. I did not support that, but the legislature included that in the most recent budget. And I just see that there's going to be more and more policies that are designed to kind of hide the fact that we are taxing these small town residents to pay for the cities.
But what will be, there have to be some new ways to shift responsibility for paying things away from the cities and away from the state and on to the smaller communities and more affluent communities. How's that going to work?
Right. Well, I mean, I mentioned the regionalization bill a moment ago, and this is the plan essentially to take individual local school boards and the towns that pay and fund them and combine them with the cities that they are next to, so that essentially the small town that's actually balancing its budget and running its town and its education department properly is going to end up having to shift some of its funding to prop up the city it's next to.
But how do you do that? Seriously, I mean, people pick their towns based on the kind of schools they have, how good the schools are, right?
Right, of course.
So how do you not have a revolution if you say to the town that has built a wonderful school system that we need to steal your money by combining you in with an urban area and making you into a single education entity and not cause a furor?
Yeah, I fully expect that people will be up in arms. But of course, they're going to try and couch it in some sort of argument that they are in some ways shrinking the overall cost because they're combining services and that sort of thing. And we should be happy.
Well, yes, I'm talking more about,
but that's not really going to happen.
I'm thinking more after the. I'm more thinking about after the fact. So they push this policy in with some nonsense explanation like that, and then people have to actually live with it. Aren't they going to be furious then?
I would hope that they're furious enough beforehand to prevent it from ever
that would
happening.
be nice.
And that's why I'm talking to you right now, to make sure that people are aware and they do get furious and they stop it from happening.
It is Senator Rob Sampson we're talking to, and he's giving us an update on some of the wonderful things the socialists at the State House are planning to try to cover up the scope of the tragedy they've made for the state economically, and also just to keep going in the socialist direction without regard for the tragedy of what they've done to the economic future and present of the state. So Medicare for all for Connecticut, is that for real?
Yeah, the public option is something that some of the most ardent left-wing Democrats have never given up on in Connecticut. And it was a bad idea when it was first attempted with the Sustanet program back in the early 2000s. And it was a bad deal when Obamacare was implemented in the state. And it's continued to drive up insurance premiums, drive up deductibles. You know, what's remarkable about the whole thing, Todd, is that the Democrats are always arguing about how we need to have more access and availability to have health care for everyone. And I couldn't agree with them more, except that their policies have actually done the opposite. I don't believe there is any significant number more people insured today than before they began this whole saga with Obamacare. And ultimately, premiums are, on the order of 30 or 40% more than they were at that time. And the deductibles are twice or three times or four times as much. So what happened to the desire for access? You've essentially limited people's ability to even use the healthcare system or as insurance because they're paying out of pocket anyway because they got a $6,000 deductible.
Yeah, but what they really want is to make more people dependent on state dollars, right? They want higher taxes and more free stuff to keep their voters in lockstep. Isn't that what all
Absolutely.
this adds up to?
It's all about, of course, it's about wealth redistribution, and it's about, giving people this false view of how government should operate, that the government is supposed to be there for the purpose of helping people, which I think is a major problem in understanding about the way this country was conceived and founded and what the role of government should be. And when you put elected officials in a position where that is what's expected of them, bad things are going to happen. The government's going to grow, and they are going to use their power to be able to manipulate outcomes. And essentially the bad part about that is they're going to pick and choose who wins and who loses. And they're going to do that not using intelligent, common sense public policy designed to propel us into a more prosperous future, but rather what's going to get them elected in the next election cycle.